Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Elementary. So, a lot of interesting things went down in this episode. Obviously, the overall case deals with a professor named Noah who's found dead, and basically rats were eating him. Basically, he was poisoned by thallium, but it turns out he's not the only victim because another person that died was also this dude named Elijah. I did like the little twist where it's like, wait, like there was a 15-year-old girl named Lacey, her blows at the crime scene. I was like, that's a twist I wasn't expecting. I was like, because basically it turns out that this was all about this company known as Galahad, who's basically doing this kind of competition. Basically, they're going to award $5 million to anyone that can, basically it's kind of like a, extending human life, essentially, make it so that kind of almost immortality essentially is what they're kind of researching, and that's what Noah was working on. Obviously, you start with rats, and you go to like pigs and monkeys, and then you eventually work your way up to humans. Well, that's what this was all about. Like essentially, that's what at first it seems like it's kind of about. And so part of me was wondering at first, when they first mentioned it before they went to commercial, I was like, oh, could she be like a really smart kid that was involved in all of this? It's like, no. Turns out in actuality, it's kind of a side thing in the episode where it's just kind of like, yeah, she was selling her blood to Elijah. Because essentially, which is funny to say just because the originals, there's a vampire, part of the Michelson family named Elijah, vampire, drinks blood. It's funny to say. Nevertheless, I know it's just a stupid little thing I just want to kind of say. But nevertheless, it's because they're selling young blood to old people, which I feel like that's a thing that happens in real life. I mean, it probably is like real life applications for that. Like, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like you hear stuff in the TV show, you're like, oh, that sounds like that could potentially be something that really happens in real life. But I guess it's just kind of like all this activity that's like all alive and bumping in young blood. It can help rejuvenate older people. So I guess it kind of leads into that same research about like, I mean, was that just kind of a side thing he was doing? I think that was kind of part of his research too, wasn't it? But I mean, it might have been just like a side business for Elijah. So I'd assume it was all about his research. I don't remember him saying anything specifically about why he was doing that. Maybe they did, and I just kind of blinked over it. But nevertheless, so that's why her blood was there, because actually it had been there previously, because obviously he probably stored her blood there as well. So then it starts turning out to me, maybe there's another route that this could be taken. It's, maybe it's all about potential, because there's people who don't agree with what the whole Galahad situation is about trying to extend human life, because there's people who are just kind of against the whole science community, because it's like, oh, that's unnatural. There's a way, there's an order to everything. You doing this is unnatural. It's blasphemy, essentially, to just design and stuff like that. So one person we met named is Hugo. I think it's so interesting that Watson was able to pick him up just because she saw the patterns, which is kind of like what is like yellowish and purple and white, which immediately my brain goes to Remy Tim. If you don't know what Remy Tim is, don't worry about it. But that's kind of but it's kind of interesting. She's like, oh yeah, it's got to be like at this particular place. What is it? The burrito something. Was it like the Burrito Palace? Was that what the place is called? It's just kind of interesting that. But I guess it's like, hey, it's like Sherlock with his bits of information that she just ended up having one. Like she has hers from time to time too. So it's kind of like, oh yeah, like that's just some random information about. It's just kind of interesting. I don't think I would have just immediately jumped to it being like this place because of this color pattern on the shirt. But I guess maybe if you go there enough, it's just one of those things. It's kind of like, oh, this kind of looks familiar. And it's like, oh, it just kind of gets ingrained in your brain. But he was the dude that was arguing with Elijah, and that's kind of what this was all about, because it's kind of, But it goes back to it because we find out that there's posts on online, because on the dark web there's people talking about this all blasphemous, like it is, like talking about these basically saying like these scientists should die, the world would be better off. Even Hugo himself is like, oh my god, like if I actually did kill these guys, which I didn't, but if I did, I'd be a hero, I'd be gloating about it and stuff like that. So there's that whole situation. Kind of directly connected to the case, and I thought was such a nice little moment, was the fact is that Sherlock walks up to Watson while she was sleeping. He's like, Watson, wake up. And she's like, wait, what? Am I dreaming? She's like, wait, did you just wake me up without any like shenanigans, without kind of making it a whole thing? And he's like, well, yeah, the fact of the matter is I'm going through my situation, and I need extended sleep, you let me. And I was like, so I wanted to kind of return that kindness. And he prefaced it by saying once. And she's just kind of like, I was like, I love that. It's just kind of like, I'm going to do this nice thing for you one time. Don't worry. We're going to be back to the good old ways of me just kind of waking you up in weird ways soon enough. I mean, I think the most roundabout way he's ever done it was like she woke up. I guess it was just like she woke up with a note on her. I think was what was it? Or it was, I want to say it was on her, not just near her, it was on her. But usually he goes about it like in a very like weird way of waking her up. But I think that's one of the few instances where he did. But I guess that still counts because it was just kind of a weird way just to wake her up rather than, I think maybe on some level it was even weirder because it's kind of like you snuck in here, you put a note on me, and then you left, So, but nevertheless, I thought that was just kind of like cute little moment. But it ultimately turns out the one behind all this was the son of the guy who's starting all this. The dude is Dudley, but his son is Hunter. Basically, it's money reasons, greed essentially, because like his dad poured all the inheritance money into this whole case. So it's like, into this whole Galahad. I keep saying Galahad situation. So he ended up killing Noah and Elijah because they were closing in on this, and that would have been more money that was poured in. Like at the very least, he wanted to keep this $5 million because if nothing happened, at least the $5 million would go back to him when his dad died because he'd be taking over the company and stuff like that, and he'd be shutting all that down. At the very least, he'd be able to keep that much of the money. So there was nothing left for him. So like it's kind of sad in the end. It's kind of very interesting because he had clipped his nails because whatever it was that was it blue stuff that you need to remove thallium from your system was in his fingernails. It's just kind of interesting. Like they found his clipped fingernails, and that was kind of enough to kind of tie him to the murder and the murders and everything. So overall, very interesting case considering what all this was about. It's kind of like two scientists who were trying to do good, extending the human life and stuff like that, and they were killed not just because some like people who were just against the whole thing, kind of looking at it as fringe science, kind of looking at it as like a terrible thing going against orders, just kind of a selfish dude who wanted to make sure he keeps some of his inheritance. He wasn't about to let all of his money get. It's like, oh, you want to do this stuff, Dad? That's fine and dandy, but you're messing with my money. Yeah, one day you're going to be gone, and all this won't mean jack squat to me when I'm broke, type of thing. So there's that. Then the other side of this episode, we have the return of Alfredo, which we have not seen Alfredo in a while. Like, let me know in the comments down below if you remember the last time we saw him. It's been a while. I was like, oh crap, Alfredo! Like, I ain't seen you in a hot minute, dude. Basically, Alfredo wanted Sherlock's help stealing money from a guy who didn't pay him because it's like, oh, Alfredo kind of did a shabby job, and so Sherlock was kind of okay with doing it. But he's like, why go about this such other means? Why not go about it legal means? Well, the fact of the matter is, it's because he needs the money. He was only going to take what he was owed from the job anyway, but it's because his brother Dante, this is the first time his brother's ever been mentioned, because even Watson didn't know about him having a brother, because I guess this might have been the first time he's ever been brought up, at least when in the context of the show. Maybe he has been brought up in conversations in the past. I don't ever remember that ever coming up, but maybe it did, like earlier seasons or something like that. But with Sherlock's not a fan of his brother because it turns out like Alfredo's brother Dante has caused a lot of problems in the past. I guess it's kind of similar to, probably to a certain extent, like Bell's situation. Like Bell's kind of had trouble with his brother in the past, and it's kind of interestingly both kind of like in Dante's case, he's the reason why Alfredo's kind of gotten in trouble in the past. First fight, first time doing heroin, first time death, like all that can be pulled back from his brother Dante, and that's why Sherlock's not a fan of him. But also, like, it's also tied into the fact as well, Sherlock kind of has problems with brothers too himself. That's what kind of sparks all of this, because it's like, oh, I thought you and the whole thing you had with Mycroft kind of got put aside, so I thought you were good. It's kind of what Watson was saying, but it's like Sherlock was like, no, he didn't. It's just kind of like didn't really say anything at first, but then eventually he lets it out. It's like, actually, my brother actually could have been home fairly recently, because it turns out all the people that were hunting him are dead, but he hasn't reached out to us or anything. So what the hell is up with that? The fact of the matter is, like, it's his, like, yeah, it's like, but then Watson's like, oh, your brother's fine. You should go out there and just kind of like reach out to him. And he's like, why should I? He's the one that screwed up this relationship that we have as brothers. So it's like, it's actually his responsibility. But Watson's like, what are you talking about? Are you a child keeping score on who messed up more? And then Sherlock's like, oh, of course you'd take his side. I mean, yes, I'm sure if I was in his situation and gave you 3.5 orgasms, you'd be on my side too. And I'm like, yeah, I love that. One of the things that kind of makes Sherlock very petty is his brother. I love that. And just that he has that conversation with Watson. And even I wonder what Watson would have said, like, because Watson looked like she was about to go like, wait, what? Like, she was kind of taken back by the fact that I wonder what she would have said in retort, dude. That was so good. But it also brings up some interesting stuff because like Alfredo later on, because Sherlock was like, okay, here's some money. You didn't steal it, did you? Of course I did. It's like, no, I was your sponsor. I know when you're lying. And so for him, it's like, yeah, I don't like your brother. So, but hey, I'm going to do this for you because I want to take the chance that you might go to jail. But Alfredo brought up something interesting because it's like, you don't want to give people chances. And I'm trying to think in regard, it's like, Sherlock is kind of very one-sided when it comes to people when he thinks people have messed up and don't deserve second chance. I mean, maybe that's also why Sherlock might be kind of hypercritical of himself on a lot of occasions, just because it's like in his mind is like, I don't know, like, I'm curious in some people's eyes, has Sherlock ever, I'm trying to look back on over the entirety of the show, like what I can like remember, because it's been a while since I've seen earlier stuff, but it's like, I don't know if Sherlock's one of those people that cuts himself a lot of slack. I feel like he's hypercritical of himself like he is most people. Like, you screw up, I don't know. I mean, because Sherlock himself has gotten a lot of chances, but that's the point like Alfredo's trying to make. The fact is that you've gotten a lot of chances, so why aren't you willing to give other people chances? I mean, let's take even like something like last season, the Shinwell situation. It's kind of like, even like he started having his huge doubts about Shinwell because of like, oh, who Shinwell was, and the fact is he was slipping back. Like, he wasn't willing to kind of give Shinwell the benefit of the doubt. You had like Watson kind of being like, no, there's got to be more to this. Obviously, it turned out to be the case that there was more to it, but still, it just kind of makes me go, huh, he never really did ever give people, I can't think of an occasion where he's actually given people a benefit of the doubt, like, you know, giving them a second or third. Maybe he has, and I'm just not thinking about it. I thought that was such an interesting thing to bring up, just because, like I say, even using that Shinwell example, just like how Sherlock views people. It's like, you messed up again. Oh, Sherlock, to be fair, was kind of giving him a second and third chance, but even then, like, he still was kind of reluctant, even at the beginnings and stuff like that. Like, obviously, he made exception because of Watson and stuff like that, so there has to be kind of like an aspect to it, because even his Dante situation, I don't care about your brother Dante, I'm making an exception because it's you. But even like, you know, Alfredo was kind of like, yeah, you can be very generous at times and saying that it looks good on him. So I thought that was kind of interesting, because also Alfredo knew like, oh, this whole brother situation, you're kind of pissed at my brother because you're actually pissed at your own brother, but you're kind of taking it out on my brother, because it's kind of like, oh, both our brothers are kind of crappy, and it's just kind of like, because your brother's extra crappy, you're just kind of being extra crappy to my brother, even though, you know, it's a kind of, because it's the thing where Alfredo's willing to give his brother a chance, but for Sherlock it's just kind of not. I guess because good argument could be, and it's something that Sherlock kind of touches on, is just because I guess when Sherlock looks at him and Alfredo's situation, is kind of like, I mean, it's the exact situation too, because Mycroft is the oldest and Dante's the oldest in Alfredo's case, so, you know, but he ends up talking to him because it's like, yeah, he went to talk to Dante, Sherlock did, and ended up giving him his peace of mind, and then was like, oh yeah, I gave him the money and everything and forgave him, because all of it was kind of steps to kind of end up forgiving his own brother, because he's like, yeah, we've done stuff, like, he's kind of wronged me, but at very least I can forgive him. Maybe he can forgive me and we can be brothers again. But sadly, when it's all said and done, Sherlock ends up finding out that his brother died like 10 months ago, which is like the most heartbreaking thing. I'm like, because I don't remember if I brought this up. It might have just been something I was thinking about when I was watching the episode, but it's like, he hasn't seen his brother since season 2's finale. Wasn't that the last time they saw each other? So, I mean, same thing for, like, I don't know if they've had any communication since then either. There might have been references to him having communication. I don't remember, but in that span of time, because that was like 4 years ago during season 2, you know, so roughly speaking. So it's been that long potentially since they've actually, been face to face and stuff like that. But that was kind of the thing, like, the relationship was in a good place, but probably that entire time, like, Sherlock like already had resentment about his brother, and then on top of that, like, finding out this new information that his brother could have come back any time made him resent him even more. But it's like, it's sad because Sherlock will never get the chance to make up with his brother. It's like, for him, he thought this was an opportunity, and Olive Branch, like, hey, we can be brothers again, kind of put our past aside. But like, there was always issues between him and his brother that they probably still never completely hashed out, and he'll never get that chance again now that his brother's gone. I mean, shocking for Watson too, because let's not forget they were in a relationship. So, because that's the sad thing for Sherlock too. It's like, his brother died, didn't even know it, and that, you know, not on his fault. It's just because his brother was on the run, but that's why he never heard from his brother, because he died like probably before he ended up finding out, like before the whole like, oh, people behind trying to kill you are all wiped out, so you don't have to worry about it. It wasn't even like they got to him first. It's just kind of like a medical condition, like he had a hemorrhage that kind of happened, and it was kind of a byproduct of someone who had leukemia in the past. So it was just kind of a medical thing. It was fine one minute and just wasn't the next. It's just kind of like, almost just kind of like, just shitty roll of the dice essentially. And like I said, it just sucks because Sherlock would never get the chance. Like you can tell he was actually hopeful for making things better between him and Mycroft, and it's like they will never get that chance. Like this whole entire time, like, you know, over these years, nothing's really said, and now it's too late. So that was kind of like a, oh man, heartbreaking moment in the episode, at least, you know, for me. I did catch a glimpse of the next episode, but it seems like we'll be dealing more heavily with this storyline in the next episode about the whole Mycroft situation. It looks like we will have a certain special guest pop up. Obviously, if you haven't seen it, I won't say who it is, so it'll be a surprise when the episode airs. But I'm very interested to see what goes down in the episode, like what, you know. Isn't this like the first time Sherlock's, well, over the course of the series, he's never really lost someone like this? I mean, you can make the argument about the whole Moriarty situation. I mean, more so in the sense of when she was being Irene and stuff. Like, obviously, when he thought, like, oh, yeah, she was killed, but it turns out she's still alive. Then it turns out she's this criminal mastermind, Moriarty. You know, that whole situation. But it's like, over the course of the series, he's never lost anyone like that, has he? I don't think so. So this is probably like the first time he's had like a severe loss of this caliber, you know? I mean, especially considering even more so because it is his brother, you know? It's like the only brother he had in this world is gone. Because, I mean, let's not forget, this is also another part of his family that's gone. The only other people left in his family now is his dad, and that relationship is what it is, where we've left it off. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what the goes down in the next episode with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, love life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good